Because in this formula of massive action times right stuff times consistency, if any one of those factors are zero, the end result is also zero. It's what that rental income allows you to do. In my mind, it buys you choice. It buys you freedom, the ability to do what you want to do. Property is a people business. You need to have relationships with people you're working with, and those develop over time. When you start anything new, whether it's a business or property, it can take some time before the results start to come through. But in 3, 6, 12 months' time, the circumstances have changed, their circumstances, the political circumstances, the legislation has changed, and actually they've had enough and they decide they want to sell. So my partner and I made £220,000 between us, £110,000 each before tax. That was a pretty good deal, and it only came because I followed up. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Property Magic Podcast, which is all about the importance of consistency. Now, this is actually part 3 of a 3-part podcast where I've been talking about the massive success formula. If you listen to the last 2 episodes, you'll know that massive success comes when you take massive action times the right stuff times consistency. So this episode is all about the final element, which is consistency. So what is that? Well, very often I see people who want to get into property, they want to get into business, and they start to dabble in property. They start to do some things, but they don't really give it enough time to get the results. Property can take a bit of time, and unfortunately we get used to going and earning money in a job, we get paid, and so we're used to getting rewarded pretty quickly. When you start anything new, whether it's a business or property, it can take some time before the results start to come through. And that's when people get impatient and then just give up thinking it doesn't work. So consistency is absolutely the key. Of course, we need to do lots of things. We need to make sure we're doing the right stuff, but the consistency is what makes the difference. So let me give you some examples of this. So one of the best ways, I believe, to find motivated landlords who want to sell for various reasons, they're getting out of the industry, is by using landlord letters. And I'm a landlord myself, I'm on the HMO register, and I often get letters come through to me. But I've noticed something very interesting. Often I get one letter from a particular investor and that's it. They never bother to send me another letter. Whereas when we teach people how to do landlord letters, we teach people it needs to be a campaign of letters over time. Because the first letter you send to that landlord, well, they might not actually receive that letter. Or maybe they do receive that letter and they think, this is amazing, I'm going to put it on my to-do pile. They never quite get round to their to-do pile. But that second, third letter reminds them that actually, oh yeah, I've had a letter before and I wanted to speak to that person. They then give you a call. Or maybe they get the letter now and now isn't the right time. They're not interested in what you're suggesting. But in 3, 6, 12 months' time, the circumstances have changed, their circumstances, the political circumstances, the legislation has changed, and actually they've had enough and they decide they want to sell. So this is why that consistency is really important. Let me give you another example. If you want to become a more successful property investor, I want to share 2 words with you that will have a huge impact and help you do a lot more deals. Those 2 words are follow up. You see, when we first speak to a seller, especially if we're trying to buy below market value or we're trying to do a creative deal such as a lease option or vendor finance, there's a good chance that seller will not be motivated enough and won't want to do what we're suggesting. And they'll say no to us. By the way, when we make an offer on a property, we want people to say no at first. Because if they've said yes, it means we've offered too much. So get used to people saying no. But when we get a no, many people think, oh, they're not interested, I'm going to move on to the next property. But the reality is we need to remember that most sellers become more motivated with time. So no does not mean no never, it just means no, not now. So we have to consistently follow up. By that I mean we might reach out to that person every month, we might drop them an email, a text, maybe even call them and say, hi, how are you? How's your property going? You're still thinking about selling? And they may not be at that time, but if we keep doing it and we keep top of mind, if they're going to sell that property, there's a good chance that we're the person going to buy it in the future if we can reach a price that works for us. But we need this consistency to keep following up. Some of my students have been following up and done deals 2 and 2.5 years after they first spoke to that owner of that property. Whereas many people would have given up a long time before. One of my very best deals I did was a BMV 27% discounted property in London. I first spoke to this seller. I actually helped her. And actually I said to her, if I was you, I wouldn't sell that property. I'd hang on to it. It seems like a good property to me. I gave her some advice that helped her avoid being repossessed. And she was over the moon by that. So I didn't buy the property. I just put some good karma out that helped her. But I followed up. I text that lady every month for a period of time. And eventually she came back and said, actually, I'm now thinking about selling. And because I'd helped her initially, and because I kept following up, I was the person she wanted to sell that property to. It was a property that was worth $225,000. She was very happy to sell it to me, 27% below market value at 162. And I bought it with a joint venture partner because all my money was tied up. 2 years later, we sold that property for £400,000. My partner and I made £220,000 between us, £110,000 each before tax. That was a pretty good deal, and it only came because I followed up. So this idea of consistency is really important. So I want you to think about, what do you do in your business, in your life, in your property investing, where you need to add more consistency? And it's about adding habits, or as we call them, rituals. Rituals are things you do that will make you rich. So what habits do you need to introduce to your life, to your property investing, to get that consistency? For example, every day, hopefully you get up and you clean your teeth. It's a routine you have. It's a habit you have. You consistently do it. If you don't have that consistency, you'll get bad teeth and gum disease, etc. So there are things we do because we know it's good for us. And there are actions that we need to do within our property investing that long term will be very good for us, because it will make us financially independent, help you replace your income, and then you have the choice and freedom about how you spend your time. And for me, that's why we should invest in property. It's not about the number of properties you own. It's not even about the rental income you make. It's what that rental income allows you to do. In my mind, it buys you choice. It buys you freedom, the ability to do what you want to do. But if you only do things once and you're not consistent, then you're not going to get the results. Because in this formula of massive action times right stuff times consistency, if any one of those factors are zero, the end result is also zero. So you've got to do massive action, doing the right things, and that's often where a coach or a mentor can help us. I meet a lot of people who are busy, they're going to network meetings, they're doing stuff, but they're not necessarily doing the right stuff, times that consistency. Another example is turning up to your local property network meeting. By going to your local network meeting, you're going to meet people there who could potentially help you with your property investing. There might be people who've got hints and tips or advice when you have a problem. Might be people who actually invest with you or find a deal for you, or you buy or you sell a deal too. But you need to grow that network. And you can't expect to go to a network meeting once and meet everyone you need to know. It's not going to happen. And besides, you haven't built the relationships. Property is a people business. You need to have relationships with people you're working with, and those develop over time. So that consistency of going to a local property investor network meeting every single month, turning up early, leaving late, committing that evening to a full evening of learning, connecting, and networking, then that's when you're going to be successful. And then the people you meet at the networking events, you need to follow up with those people. Don't meet someone once at a network meeting and then call them out the blue 12 months later because you want to do a deal with them. They won't remember who you are. But by keeping in touch and consistently and growing your network, you'll have lots of people who you can work with and ultimately become a more successful investor by working with people for a mutual win-win. This is why consistency is so important. If you want to lose weight, you can't just have one healthy meal. It's about having continuous healthy meals and making choices. And sometimes the small choices we make, they compound to bigger impacts on our life. For example, when I was traveling to lots of PIN meetings around the country, I'd often travel by train because I have very bad eyesight, I don't drive. And I would often find myself going to a PIN meeting, I'd be talking, busy networking, and I often wouldn't have any food. So I'd get to a train station to get the train back to Birmingham, and I'd have a choice. I'd have the choice of going to something like a Burger King and getting a burger, or going to M&S and getting a salad. And occasionally I would get a Burger King, but most of the time I'd get a salad. And by the way, I don't eat meat now, but still, at that time, that's what I would do. Because I knew if I had a Burger King every time I went to a station late at night, I would put on weight and it wouldn't be good for me. But by having a salad more often than not, I was putting good, nutritious food into me. And I was having that consistency of making that right decision to eat healthy. So there'll be all sorts of areas in your life where you need to add consistency in to become a more successful person. So I'd really like you to think about that as the outcome from this episode of the podcast, because I hope you're not just listening to this. I want to inspire you. I want to give you ideas and information going to make you more successful investor, but I also want to help you develop yourself and improve yourself. And I believe by bringing some consistency of some good habits, some smart choices into your life will make you not only a more successful property investor, but a more successful person generally. So I do hope you've enjoyed this explanation of the massive success formula, which is massive action times the right stuff times consistency. If you follow that formula, and that's what many of my truly successful students do, you likewise will have incredible success with your property investing and generally in life. If you've enjoyed the podcast, I'd love you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to make sure you're notified anytime a new video comes out. If you're listening to this podcast, I'd really appreciate if you can give me a 5-star review wherever you download the podcast from. Give it a 5-star rating and explain what you like about the podcast, because that will help more people find this and ultimately benefit from listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill.